The SEC and the Big Ten want the Big 12 to go away. But the Big 12's response, in essence, was, wait, we're not done expanding. This is Locked On Big 12.
You are Locked On Big 12, your daily podcast on the Big 12 Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Monday, everybody. Welcome to Locked On Big 12. I'm Drake Toll, known antagonist of the Savannah Bananas. Thanks for making Locked On Big 12 your first listen every single day. We have talked over the last couple of weeks about expansion opportunities for this conference and where they're going to go, what they're going to do. And I think we are getting a clearer picture that Brett Yormark does want to expand, does plan to expand. And my idea is that 20 is the amount of teams this conference will go to. And we've got a little bit to back that up at this point. Ross Dellenger has reported really well on the SEC, the Big Ten, and the rest of the conferences in talks about the future of the college football playoff. We have to establish, starting in 2026, what is this thing going to look like? How much money is everyone going to get? How many teams are going to be there? And the Big 12 was upset when the Big Ten and the SEC wanted 3 teams apiece, auto bids, whereas the ACC and the Big 12 got 2 teams apiece. And the other two, those 2 big power conferences, wanted 58% of the revenue that effectively dwarfs the ACC and the Big 12, who would be splitting like 30% or something like that. And 10% goes to Notre Dame and everybody else. So Brett Yormark's response to this, which I think is legendary, is, wait a second. Before we go making all of these crazy claims, let's do a look-in provision. Now, what does this mean? It's beautifully broken down on heartlandcollegesports.com by Bryan Clinton. And what this whole this system is Yormark saying, hey, before we make this decision, let's talk about realignment. Yormark is saying, in essence, before you tell me that my conference is not at the same level of the Big Ten and the SEC, before you tell me that you're going to set us to the wayside, let's let the realignment thing shake out. And here's what I take from this first. A commissioner does not say that when his conference is about to have teams poached. You've seen recently that, like, Andy Staples has put out that the future of college football is Texas Tech going to the SEC or West Virginia going to the SEC, Utah to the Big Ten. If I'm Brett Yormark, I see that and I think, that's stupid. I'm not in a position to be poached. I'm in a position where I know that we are intent on expansion to the point that in these negotiations, I need everybody to sit back and not count us out because we've got bigger plans. There is a bigger picture to this. And you could make the case that Brett Yormark is bluffing here. I would understand that. You could say, oh, well, of course he would say that. He's a negotiator. He's sitting at the negotiation table saying, hey, wait, guys, don't give me the short end of the stick. I can do something different. I can do something bad. And I understand how you could deduce that from this. However, that's a George Kliavkoff move. That's the former Pac-12 commissioner, George Kliavkoff, who, when comparing him to Brett Yormark, one guy's a businessman, the other is the deposed commissioner of the dead Pac-12. There is a very clear difference over what Brett Yormark has done and other leaders in college football who have given you bluffs. I would argue, and to give you a little bit of context here if you don't understand, Charlie Baker is the king of bluffs. He's the NCAA president. And what he has done over the course of the last year especially is try to go to SEC Commissioner Greg Sankey and say, hey, before you make any big decisions, I just want you to know I'm on your side. I'm in your back pocket. Whatever you need, I can get it for you. And if you want to create a super league that only takes the top 20 teams in college football and you can do whatever you want with NIL, maybe even make players employees of the schools, or you can do whatever you want with a portal, create your own rules. There are vague attempts at like grasping for straws for the NCAA to keep these power conferences. And that's why I do believe the SEC, the Big Ten, and even the Big 12 will eventually detach from what the NCAA is. All of that being said, those are the kind of figures in these conversations who love to bluff. Brett Yormark is not one of those. So when he says, hold the phone, before you give me less money, before you give me less teams, let's include a look-in provision. He encouraged a look-in provision, according to Ross Dellenger, and broken down again by Bryan Clinton, that would say when the Big 12 moves forward in expansion, we get a seat at the big boy table. We don't get that short end of the stick. And if you're looking at what the ACC is, they're not in a spot to fight for this. Florida State and that conference are currently locked in this wild lawsuit battle where Florida State has sued the ACC for its grant of rights, effectively calling it unfair. In essence, I believe it could be fraudulent. And the ACC responded by saying, you know what? Fine. We'll sue you. And Florida State sued them in the state of Florida. And the ACC sued Florida State in the state of North Carolina. That, my friends, is going to end one of two ways. I can almost guarantee 98%. One way is a settlement where Florida State pays $150 million and they leave. At which point we've set the price for what Clemson could pay to settle. We've set the price of what North Carolina or Miami could pay to settle here. The other case is that the ACC truly tries to hash this out. And if they do, I believe they will lose based on the court documents that have been released and what the ACC is suing Florida State for and what Florida State's suing the ACC for. I think the administration of the Seminoles has a great case here. And in the event that they win and they get out of the conference scot-free and the ACC gets nothing, that Jim Phillips gets nothing, no money, that's when everybody departs. And in both of those scenarios that are bound to happen, the ACC loses power brands. Florida State, absolutely gone. Clemson, though I don't know how well they stack up when compared to the SEC or the Big Ten schools, or whether or not those two conferences would want them. By the way, fun aside, have you heard many rumors, many sources about those two leagues talking to Clemson or being interested in Clemson? I haven't, because I don't think they are. Back to the topic. Miami leaves, Clemson's left, North Carolina already wants out, they're unhappy, and then Virginia says, look, we feel like we have a better value. We could find a landing spot with our TV market in the SEC or building a chokehold, or our brand is big enough to be in the Big Ten. And at that point, you open the door for the Big 12, in my opinion, to specifically get a Pitt, a Louisville, a Virginia Tech, and NC State. And then there's the wild intricacy of, oh, well, if you take Virginia Tech, if you take NC State, don't you have to take UNC and Virginia? Aren't their state governments going to require that? And that's a possibility. There's where you get in the weeds. But the biggest of the weeds is what Florida State is doing to that conference, ripping it apart as we speak. And when that goes away, the Big 12 has an opportunity to create a Big Three, to have the SEC, the Big 10, and the Big 12. And here's what keeps the Big 12 afloat, what gives them a fighter's chance in this scenario, in what, my opinion, will win Brett Yormark the opportunity to have that look-in provision, is depth. You're looking at a complete conference. You're looking at a complete athletic conference based on revenue of these schools. Everyone is in I say everyone, a large majority of these schools are in a position to continually compete from a monetary standpoint in college athletics. That's a lot of mumbo jumbo. Here's what I'm saying. Ole Miss, Mississippi State, South Carolina. These schools are Big 12 schools from a money standpoint. They're right there on the edge with the rest of this conference. It's not that crazy. Like we build out that, oh, wow, the SEC is so much better. Yeah, the top five schools are for sure. Oh, the Big Ten, it's so much more. They have the prowess. Yeah, for sure, the top 4 or 5 schools. But once we get down the food chain here, there's a lot of similarities between the Big 12 and what you get in the Big Ten and the SEC. That's true. That's true based on athletic revenue numbers. And with that being said, that's how the Big 12 stays alive. Brett Yormark he's not blowing hot air up your skirt. He's not blowing hot air up my skirt. The Big 12 is going to get bigger. He intends to expand. And this is a warning to everybody else to say, look, don't short me yet, because I'm coming everywhere. Coming up, Kansas got killed. BYU's a machine, and Mayday for TCU on Locked On Big 12, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's show is brought to you by Amazon Fire TV. This TV is fire. Nah, I mean, I am shocked. You can just Amazon Fire TV, pop that sucker in, watch free TV, free millions of free movies, TV episodes, and baseball, basketball, the NCAA tournament. I can watch YouTube. This very show, the Locked On Network, is on Amazon Fire TV. Fire TV recently created Fire TV channels to deliver a constant supply of the latest videos from your favorite sports brands, all for free, including us. Highlights and more to keep up to date with March Madness, the NBA, MLB, and a lot more. Not to mention great news, entertainment, gaming, and even travel and cooking videos and all that, whatever you want. Trust me on this. To learn more, visit Amazon.com/Locked On Fire TV. That is Amazon.com/Locked On Fire TV. Today's show is also brought to you by Game Time. Game Time is where I go to get tickets. It's like, I want to go to the concert tonight. I'm going to Game Time. And I'm going to buy these tickets 30 minutes before the concert. And I'm going to see what seat I get before I go to the concert. Last minute tickets, flash deals, zone deals. Easy to find and buy tickets, views from all seats in the venue, and the lowest price guaranteed, even event cancellation, job loss protection with Game Time. Game Time, you download the app. It gives you complete peace of mind. They are obsessed with finding ways for you to save money on tickets. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the app, create an account, use code Locked On for $20 off your first purchase. Oh, the tickets were only $20. Well, with code Locked On, they're free. Create an account, redeem code Locked On for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets. Lowest prices, and folks, that is guaranteed. Saturday in Big 12 basketball, it's like the first time you're like, oh gosh, dang. There are a lot of ranked teams that go down. You're looking at and upsets. You're looking at that you go, oh, who's fraudulent? Now, like TCU losing to UCF. A Baylor losing at Texas Tech, where they sucked. Then they looked good. Then they looked sucky again. How about Iowa State, the number 6 team in the country, losing to Kansas State? And now the Wildcats have an opportunity with a couple of wins in the Big 12 tournament to get back in the conversation for March Madness. If they're a 20-win team, they're going dancing. And then Houston, holding the Kansas Jayhawks to 46 points, and the Jayhawks might be without Hunter Dickinson for the rest of this season. Kevin McCullough is still not 100% as well, and Bill Self is evaluating both of those. Then there's the BYU Cougars, who honestly sucked offensively in the first half against Oklahoma State. The Cowboys slowed the game down. Mike Boynton had a good game plan. It was 32-29 at half. Oh my God, like soupy duty. And then you know what I thought of? Wait a second. The defense is actually pretty good. And what I learned about the BYU Cougars, we'll start with this game, is Mark Pope, he's like the king of adjustments. Oh, the shots aren't falling? Well, our defense has kicked it into gear. Second half, we can speed the game up. The shots are falling. Our defense is still there, but now we can focus more on the offensive side of the game, and the depth of BYU is so stellar that it helped them to a 10-win, a double-digit win conference season in Big 12 play. This is not the hottest team in the league right now, given that loss at Hilton Coliseum where all of us lose. But, man, they are close to it. Like, you look at the rest of the conference, it's Houston and then BYU for the hottest teams in this league. And I believe the Cougars have a shot with the right way the bracket stacks up to make some noise in March. Let's go Kansas-Houston now. The Houston Cougars are Big 12 champions in year number 1 in basketball. And look, can I say something? Unreal. Jamal Shad, unreal. LJ Cryer, unreal. Kelvin Sampson. But this isn't shocking, I guess. I've seen a lot of rhetoric out of Houston fans is everyone counted us out. Everybody told us we could never win games in the Big. Everybody said we were going to. Did I think they would win 15 games? No. Did I think Houston was going to win the conference? I didn't have them picked first. But I don't think this is as shocking as Houston fans would want me and you and everybody else to think. This is one of the elite programs in college basketball, has been at least over the last 5+ years under Kelvin Sampson. 15-3 in the Big 12 is absurd. Undefeated in non-conference play. Holding Kansas to 21 points in the first half, just to hold the Jayhawks to 25 points in the second half and win 76-40. They beat Bill Self's team into submission. That is unrealistic. Now, my question still stands. And I was talking a lot last week about, Houston's not 100% healthy. How well can they keep up in March? They just showed you they're going to be okay. I'm still wondering, based on how, and I think we'll know, based on how Houston approaches the Big 12 tournament, how much gas is left in this tank. But as of right now, it's a whole lot. And this team is as dangerous as, they are the most dangerous team in the country. They play like an NBA team. Kansas fans, you just saw it. They play like an NBA team. For Kansas State, what are you doing here? Arthur Kaluma, I am so sad. The Big 12 first. Tyler Perry just didn't pan out. He was a bust. Tyler Perry, even in the games where Tyler Perry was, and I was so excited to see him in the Big. I was so excited to see him play for Jerome Tang. And even in the games where he dropped 23 points, he would just go cold the last minute and a half. He didn't have the I'm the guy at the very end in a lot of conference games, hence why Kansas State goes 8-10. But I still think 8-10 can get you to March. For Iowa State, buddy, your job's done. Like, I didn't watch this game and think, oh no, I'm so worried about Iowa State. And 3 weeks ago, I might have. I probably would have made a strong case of, we didn't see Iowa State offensively put on a show. Should that be a concern moving into March Madness? Can their offense play? But I'm not worried about this team because you've gotten to a point where some Big 12 teams can get, and that's, we've pretty much done all we can do. We're a 2 seed. We're locked into this sucker. Let's just go off into the sunset, be fat, sassy, and happy. And I love that Kansas State got this win because it gives the Big 12 a chance at another team getting to go dancing. Then there is the Baylor-Texas Tech game. I think for Texas Tech, what I'm wondering is what version are you going to get in March Madness? What version are you going to get in any 10-minute span? It just varies. It constantly varies, which is like, oh, okay, what do I do with that? For Baylor, this is the first time in a couple of weeks this team has looked truly human, and not just human, but bad. Baylor looked bad at points in this game. And still confident that Scott Drew's team can win in March Madness, but I'm worried that second round game comes up against a Big East team and it doesn't fare their way. For Texas Tech, I'm gaining a lot more confidence for what they can do in March. They finished the Big 12 season 11-7. Texas over Oklahoma. Congrats. Cincinnati, outside looking at a March for sure, but better. UCF TCU. Frogs, you're a lock. You've made it. You're in March Madness. I don't think that's an issue, but now I'm with it. I'm with the fans. The fans of a week ago were like, oh, we're going to get our butts kicked in round 1. Yeah. Jerry Palm has you projected to play Florida Atlantic in round 1 as a 9 seed. They're the 8 seed. That might not go very well. I'm sorry. Jamie. Tough, man. But going dancing the third year in a row, that's pretty good. I'll give it to you. Coming up, conference tournament's coming up, and your team needs to lose. This is Locked On Big 12, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's show is brought to you by LinkedIn Talent Solutions. LinkedIn Talent Solutions is where I go. I have hired an intern to help me do the social media of Locked On Big 12, namely the Twitter side. And he came from LinkedIn Talent Solutions, linkedin.com/Locked On. It's super easy. Millions of companies have used LinkedIn to find a qualified candidate, and 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. They know that you're wearing so many hats, so they give you the easiest way to hire with more time and resources that come from them. 2.5 million small businesses use LinkedIn for hiring. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnCollege, linkedin.com/LockedOnCollege to post your job for free. Keep in mind that terms and conditions do apply. The Big 12 tournament is coming up, and your team probably needs to lose. If you are a Kansas, there is no I know Bill Self loves to do it. There's no reason to stay in Kansas City for how banged up you are. If you are Houston, there is no reason to stay in Kansas City because of how banged up you are. If you are Baylor, Jerry Palm now has you on the 2 line. There is no reason to stay very long in Kansas City. You're going to be okay. And if you are BYU, even a BYU, maybe you want to win one game and then get the heck out of Dodge. You beat Oklahoma State or UCF, which should be easy, right? Should be easy. And then you're done. You're done. What I really needed from BYU was a favorable shake. I was worried when the Cougars were a 5 seed and they were going to get Grand Canyon, the 12 seed in round 1. Grand Canyon is really good under Scott Drew's little brother. Then the round 2 matchup would have been a San Diego State team the BYU has beaten before, but I would have hated for the Cougars to play them. Now Jerry Palm predicts that BYU will host in Salt Lake City, it's effectively hosting, and play UC Irvine in round 1 as a 4 seed. Then the winner of South Florida and South Carolina, that's a 5 versus 12. And brother, I love it. I think that BYU is in the perfect spot to just lose in the Big 12 tournament. And here's part of the reason that I'm saying this. Your team that is in March Madness, maybe like a TCU, I guess you need to win. Oklahoma, that actually is a huge game because then you're talking really about seeding, and does one of those teams fall to the 11th spot where they got a play-in game? And for Kansas State, we already know Texas is in March. If they beat Texas and they beat Iowa State, do we get to see them play in March Madness? I think the answer is yes. For like a Cincinnati, if they can beat West Virginia and beat Kansas, that's a best case scenario. That is a best case scenario for Kansas, who's locked themselves into March Madness and locked themselves into a 4 seed at the worst, probably, I think. And then Cincinnati gets to play Baylor. I think Baylor can still go home and be okay as a 2 or a 3 seed. And in that event, Cincinnati can move on to the Big 12 semifinal, and they've got a better shot playing against Kansas State to make it to the NCAA tournament. Now we're talking even more teams, possibly double-digit teams, getting in for the Big 12. For BYU, you move on after beating UCF and Oklahoma State. It's a dream scenario for me. You lose to Texas Tech. Now you get rest. You're a 4 seed. You get ready for UC Irvine and South Carolina. I think you win both of those games. Congrats. You're going to the Sweet 16. I like that a lot better than the draw you had as a 5 seed, according to CBS and Jerry Palm. For Texas Tech, you get another win under your belt. You just got the Baylor one. You get another win under your belt. And Palm has them as a 5 seed right now. If they can move up on the 4 line, that would be huge. Texas Tech is playing Richmond in round 1. That 5-12, don't like it. In round 2, they're playing Alabama. Really don't like that. Let's try to get you to a 4 seed spot. So you're like what BYU is, playing UC Irvine and then South Carolina, where I have much more confidence. Then, now that Texas Tech is in the semifinal, Houston, if you just lose out to, say, TCU, now the Horned Frogs can get off that 8-9 line and not play a 1 seed in round 2. My dream scenario, I think it behooves the Big 12 for TCU, okay? TCU, Texas Tech, Kansas State, and Cincinnati to be the 4 semifinalists. And that's absurd, right? You're counting out. You're counting out 3 of the top 4 teams in this conference from going to the semifinals of the conference tournament. But when I tell you, national champions don't win their conference tournament. That just doesn't really happen. I loved in 2021 when I was closely covering the Baylor Bears. I went to Indianapolis, saw them win a national championship against Gonzaga. I love that they lost out to Cade Cunningham and Oklahoma State. It gave Oklahoma State a boost. And for Baylor, they didn't need to be there. If you're already locked in, unless you're a team like a Texas Tech who could lose and still be okay, or could win and play for seeding here, unless you're that guy, just go home. Get some rest. Think about there are teams like Longwood or Morehead State who just won, or Drake who just won, who get a week off, and you instead are like 2 weeks off. They get like 10 days off, and you instead are running and gunning in your Big 12 tournament against the best conference in college basketball. Just don't. I'm asking you not to compete, and it doesn't hurt you. Like the loss itself doesn't hurt you. So I plead with you again. If your name is BYU, lose in the Big 12 tournament. If your name is Iowa State, lose in the Big 12 tournament. If your name is Houston, lose in the Big 12. If your name is Kansas, lose in the Big 12 tournament. Even Baylor, lose in the Big 12 tournament. Everything's going to be okay. It's not going to change anything. And if you are the number 1 overall seed, Houston, that's okay too. I just don't think the bracketologists, the powers that be, are really going to care that you lost to TCU in the Big 12 tournament, because they know that this tournament's a joke. The SoCon tournament, that matters. Somebody needs to play for March there. The Big 12 tournament, it doesn't. Unless Cincinnati or Kansas State wins it and we get 10 teams in a March Madness. That would rock. Speaking of rocking, this show rocks, right? It's the number 1 Big 12 show in America. I think that's cool. Personally, I do. I met Roger Clemens this weekend and Jake Peavy, which was neat. Roy Oswalt was there as well in Houston. Savannah Bananas and the Party Animals. It's cool. It's cool. Come back tomorrow. We'll talk with a college basketball analyst, a pretty popular one too, about college basketball. This has been, and always will be, Locked On. Thanks for making it your first listen every single day. Dose Grande.